Pizza delivery driver sees inside a customer's trailer and knows she has to act quickly. Just like restaurants and coffee shops, pizza delivery drivers have regular customers. Over time, drivers of pizza shops like Domino's get to know their customers pretty well. Unlike other businesses, however, these delivery drivers are also seeing where their customers live and the state of their home. When Domino's delivery drivers Angela Nugent and Sarah Hughes saw the inside of one of their regular customers' homes, they knew they had to act fast. The two women, who are mother and daughter, went above and beyond their employee duties to help 76-year-old Lee Haas. Living in Anoka County, Minnesota, Angela Nugent worked as a delivery driver for Domino's, but that's not the job she's always had. Before being a Domino's driver, Angela worked for the Minnesota Visiting Nurses. Angela told The Atlantic, "I did housekeeping for people with AIDS and HIV. Then they closed my department. They offered me another position with hospice, but I had a daughter that died while I was working for Minnesota Visiting Nurses, and it was just too difficult for me to think of going to work with other people that were dying, so I left." After she left the Minnesota Visiting Nurses, Angela began looking for other work. She often took care of her grandchildren and needed to find a job with a flexible schedule. Angela decided that she would apply to be a Domino's driver where her daughter Sarah also worked. Soon she was in the flow of her new job, which allowed for one of the two women to always be home with the kids, too. Angela told Atlantic, "I would help Sarah out quite a bit watching her children. I got a job at Domino's and worked opposite hours of hers. It was flexible enough for me to watch her kids while she worked and then for her to have her children when I went to work." Both of the women delivered pizza around their town in Anoka County, Minnesota. Oftentimes, they would serve the same customers, including Lee Haas. One customer that Angela and Sarah could count on hearing from was 76-year-old Lee Haas. A resident of Anoka County, Lee would order pizza from Domino's every Saturday. Angela told USA Today that his order was like clockwork. "Around 10:15 a.m., you're going to get an order from Lee. He likes to order every Saturday, so at least once a week, Angela or Sarah would pull up to Lee's trailer with his favorite pizza." The year 2015 was incredibly hard on Lee. A series of unfortunate and unpredictable events changed his life entirely. First, his home was damaged in a bad storm. The house needed a lot of work to make it inhabitable again, and Lee didn't have the savings to do it, so he was forced to move into a trailer on his property. Then, tragedy struck when his son was unexpectedly killed in a snowmobile accident. Lee was completely heartbroken and down on his luck, but that didn't keep him from being kind to others and optimistic about his own future. After his house was no longer safe to live in, Lee moved into a trailer on his property in Minnesota, but the trailer wasn't in good shape either. At 76 years old, Lee felt that he didn't have many options, but after seeing where he lived, Domino's delivery driver Sarah, Angela's daughter, didn't feel good about it. The trailer roof and siding was rusted and deteriorating. The same storm that had destroyed his house had left the trailer in bad shape, and winter was on the horizon. After Sarah delivered pizza to Lee one day, she went home and told her mom the state of inside. She had discovered that the trailer didn't have electricity, heat, or plumbing. Although Lee was trying to make the best of the situation by ordering pizza since he couldn't make food, Sarah knew he would be in danger once the temperatures dropped and another storm hit. Angela's daughter told her what she learned. "I thought, we got to do something. I can't let a human being live like this," Angela explained to USA Today. Since they learned of his harsh living conditions, Lee was on the minds of Angela and Sarah. Even though her days of working with the Minnesota Visiting Nurses was over, Angela still had an intuition to help people in need. Angela told The Atlantic, "The pizzas are what Lee would live on the weekends because he was elderly and couldn't get Meals on Wheels." She realized, however, that finding ways to get food was only one of Lee's problems. Warmth and shelter were also a big problem that needed to be solved, and quickly. Lee was a kind, older man, and Angela wanted to do whatever she could to help him when she saw him. "I would look forward to delivering to him and just being a little ray of sunshine to him every Saturday morning," saying, "How are you doing, Lee?" She even went out of her way to make sure he had what he needed. Sometimes I would stop at the store and grab him a hot cup of coffee and a donut before I'd go there with his pizza. Angela's empathetic personality wouldn't stop there, however. She told USA Today there's no way somebody can live like that and be fine, so you just step in and you do what you gotta do. Truly going above her call of duty as a Domino's driver, Angela set up a GoFundMe page explaining Lee's story and asking for help for whoever could make a donation. On the page, Angela included a photo of the dilapidated trailer and the title, "Not in Our Community," urging people to help the elderly neighbor find a new home. The GoFundMe page that Angela made gained traction as people signed on to donate. Although she initially thought she would get some contributions from her fellow community members, the page reached generous people far beyond their Minnesota town. "We got donations from as far as Australia," she told USA Today. Her goal to raise $35,000 was almost entirely met in 2 months, with around 765 people pitching in a total of $32,000 to help Lee find a safe place to live. Now that Angela had the donation money, she was ready to take the next step in finding a safe home for Lee. After doing some research, Angela was able to find a trailer in her local community that was in good condition and would fit Lee's housing needs. Once again, generous neighbors in their Minnesota community pitched in and donated furniture to make Lee's new place move-in ready. The woman who delivered pizzas to Lee's door was now delivering him a new home. Angela was able to secure Lee's new home just in time for Christmas. Luckily, she was able to raise the funds in 2 months, so Lee would be moved in before the temperature got colder and the snow would start to fall. Along with her daughter Sarah and other community members who pitched in to help, they anxiously awaited the moment that they would surprise Lee with his new home. As you can imagine, Lee was completely taken aback by the generosity of Angela and the community. After one of the toughest years in his life, Lee was being given a helping hand to get back on his feet. Not only did his new home have electricity, heating, and plumbing, but the crew of volunteers made sure that it was cleaned, stocked with food, and felt like home. They even brought in a Christmas tree. Once they presented Lee with his new home, Sarah gave him a big hug. "You remember when this started and I promised you we were going to help you?" she asked him, fighting back the tears. Lee couldn't believe his eyes and took his time trying to find the right words. "It's wonderful," he said. "I'm so grateful for people doing this." Without family around to help Lee when he needed it, the community stepped up in a big way, and he appreciated every one of them. After the initial shock wore off a bit and everyone was given a minute to dry their eyes, it was time to give Lee a tour of his new home. Angela, Sarah, and the volunteers made sure that the cabinets were stocked with food, and Lee had everything he needed to take care of himself when Meals on Wheels wasn't able to reach him on the weekends. The home also had a washer and dryer and a welcoming message in the bedroom that read, "Joy, hope, love, peace, believe." While Lee continued to express his gratitude for all that his new friends had done for him, they made sure to let him know that they wanted to do it. While everyone gathered in the living room with Santa Claus hats, Angela told Lee, "Every single one of us enjoyed doing this." She continued, "This ain't all for Lee. We all benefited." The effort that Angela and her daughter Sarah put into helping Lee also brought the community together and allowed others from around the world to help too. Now that Lee was comfortable and safe in his new home, Angela and Sarah could rest a bit easier, knowing their friendly regular customer would be okay through the winter. But of course, their work only inspired them to help others even more. Seeing the difference they could make, reaching out to people they met while working as delivery drivers for Domino's, made them change the way they felt about every customer. Of course, Lee isn't the only Domino's customer that Angela met and saw needed some help. After successfully getting Lee moved into his new home, she began to think about the other people she met while working. Another customer's daughter just had surgery for Crohn's disease and was very, very ill, and mother was out of work, Angela told The Atlantic. So once again, Angela took to GoFundMe to help another member of the community that she met while delivering pizzas. I started a GoFundMe for her, and we are getting enough donations that her mother doesn't have to worry about going back to work right now, Angela told The Atlantic. She continued, Lee really stood out for quite some time and doesn't order for delivery anymore because he's got a stove and a refrigerator and a microwave. Now that he's taken care of, Angela is looking for other people she can help. Some friendships we develop in our lives can be truly life-changing. This statement has never been truer than when looking at the friendship between Clyn Scales and her favorite police officer in Missouri. Every day when she was 9 years old, Clyn would wait for him to make his rounds. The pair looked forward to being the light in each other's day. Then something happened to Clyn that could have cut her life tragically short, if not for her friend. What exactly happened? How was Clyn's life saved? What happened after? At 9 years old, Clyn Scales found her first hero, a local police officer who was assigned to make the rounds in her neighborhood every day. She kept track of what time he would be passing by her house and would sit by the window waiting. When he'd pass by, Clyn would excitedly wave to say hello. The police officer enjoyed the friendly interaction and would wave back. Every day the pair would exchange hellos, often brightening otherwise hard days. There's a reason why Clyn's neighborhood was patrolled daily. She didn't exactly have an easy childhood. Clyn Scales grew up in Kansas City, Missouri. During the 1990s, when she was a little girl, she would help her mom take care of her two youngest brothers. To anyone on the outside, she seemed like just another young girl living a normal life. Her life, however, was anything but normal. Clyn's neighborhood was so dangerous she would look forward to seeing the police officer drive by her house every day. This was the truth of Clyn's life, and somehow she found a way to embrace it. It was for this reason she survived through the most difficult time of her life. The house that Clyn Scales grew up in with her brothers and mother was in a neighborhood ruined by drugs and violence. It was no place for a child to have to grow up, but it was the reality of Clyn's situation. Making matters worse, Clyn's mother was rarely home, having to work ruthless hours to keep a roof over her family's heads. This meant a lot of Clyn's life growing up was spent raising her brothers. That's a lot to ask someone who isn't even a teenager. As the oldest sibling in a household with the absentee parent, Clyn took much responsibility for her brothers. She knew they needed to eat, so she would walk through her dangerous neighborhood to go to 7-Eleven. Without money to pay for the essentials, young Clyn was forced to steal what she needed to survive. The troubled life of Clyn and her brothers was heartbreaking to think about. No child should grow up without a childhood, and that's essentially what happened. Clyn became a mother to her brothers, and her love drove her to do whatever needed to be done for their well-being, even at her own health's decline. Because of the way she was forced to live her life, it wasn't long until the police noticed Clyn Scales. They learned everything they could about the down-on-their-luck family. One police officer in particular found himself especially concerned. This was the officer who ended up driving by Clyn's house every day, becoming a light in an otherwise dark world. Their daily exchange became unexpected and highly anticipated. This officer was making a huge difference in Clyn's life. He had no idea that before he knew it, he'd also be saving it. Not only did the unnamed police officer drive by Clyn's house every day to make sure she was safe, he told her that he was there to protect her. Fully grown today, Clyn said, "Through all the bad situations, I could just picture him saying that he was there for us." This dedication helped Clyn get through even her darkest times. Those words would come to me during the worst times of my childhood life. It wouldn't be long until this promise would be fulfilled, proving to Clyn that good still existed in the world. Little Clyn Scales quickly grew attached to her new friend. He was the one person that I trusted in my life as a kid. She loved greeting him every day, and he loved waving back. When she didn't show up to greet him one day, he knew something was wrong. Their greeting had become routine, and considering the neighborhood Clyn lived in and the responsibilities she had as a mother, missing her daily greeting was a troubled warning sign that something wasn't right. Cautiously, the police officer approached the Scales household and let his instincts take over. What he found when he opened the door was devastating. Little Clyn was laying on the floor, struggling to take a single breath. The officer rushed Clyn to the emergency room, where all he could do was wait. We know now that Clyn survived, but imagine being this officer with no idea what was happening. We can't imagine how hard it must have been to helplessly wait outside of the emergency room. Luckily for the police officer, his quick thinking saved Clin's life. At the hospital, it was determined she had suffered a severe episode of malnutrition. If he hadn't found her at the time he did, there's a good chance Clin would not be alive today. Shortly after the incident, Clin moved with her family to Texas. She was never able to say thank you to the man who had saved her life. Knowing it's never too late, Clin set out 20 years later to track down her unnamed hero. One of the first things Clin did when she began searching for her hero was to post about her experience online. She didn't know who might come to see what she was posting, but she stayed optimistic. Her optimism paid off when she saw a comment by Jennifer Jones. Jones was a sergeant at the Kansas City Police and saw Clin's story. She told Clin she thought she knew the officer being described. Was Clin about to find out the true identity of her childhood hero? Was her search for the truth uncovered this easily? In 2016, an officer named Jeff Colvin opened an email from Jennifer Jones. The email talked about Clin and the story she wrote about online. She explained there was a little girl who lived down the street from the station Colvin worked at, was grown up and looking for her guardian angel. Colvin recognized the story right away. He knew who Clin was and knew that the little girl whose life he saved was able to grow up. Years of worry and wondering were flushed away with joy and happiness. Just as Clin Scales had never forgotten about Jeff Colvin, he had never forgotten her either. As he said, I had actually thought about her and wondered whatever happened with her. Now he didn't have to wonder anymore. He knew the truth. The truth made him ecstatic. He was overwhelmed with happiness to learn that Clin was alive. He was also incredibly touched she remembered him and had reached out to find him. The only thing left to do was to be reunited with Clin. After 20 years not knowing what had happened to the other, Colvin and Clin reunited in person. Both were overwhelmed with emotions. Clin even broke down in tears upon seeing her childhood hero again. She admitted that she thought it would never happen. Colvin's life was changed by the reunion too. He had spent so long on the force dealing with more failures than successes, he was losing his passion for the job. Seeing Clin reignited the fire inside him. When Jeff Colvin saw Clin for the first time in 20 years, something amazing happened. His passion for the job returned. He said, "Most times we go through our career not realizing we truly helped anybody out. I wondered if I was even in the right career path." Officer Colvin at that moment knew without a doubt that he'd made the right career choice. He then learned that his choices led Clin to make a unique career choice of her own. Inspired by her childhood hero, Clin Scales revealed to Colvin that she applied to be a police recruit in Houston. His heroics had led her down her own path to become a police officer and work to make a positive impact in the lives of those around her. The surprises didn't end there. Scales had been dreaming of this reunion for 20 years. Not only was Colvin her childhood hero and career inspiration, he was like a surrogate father to her. With that, she had one more thing to tell him. As soon as Clin learned the name of her hero, she had a bracelet made with the words "Sergeant Jeff Colvin, a true hero," engraved on it. She said she got the bracelet to honor her hero and friend, reiterating she sees him as her guardian angel. The story of Clin and Colvin proves the positive power that police officers can have on communities and individuals. Clin isn't the only person who has ever had her life changed by an officer, something she found out when her story went viral. Knowing there are few things as powerful for police stations as community outreach, the Kansas City, Missouri Police Department shared the story online. Her story went viral instantly, with many people inspired to share their own amazing stories about police officers. Not surprisingly, several commenters shared their own stories about Sergeant Colvin and the amazing things he had done for them. As it turns out, Clin's life wasn't the only one he saved after all his years on the street. He was a true local Kansas City hero. In today's world, police officers aren't always treated with respect, and the overwhelming support Clin and Colvin received was incredible. One comment read, "I have great respect for all police, though some deserve it more than others." In this case, no one deserves more respect than Jeff Colvin for the time and care he took in protecting Clin during her time of need. and Clyn has now made it her life's mission to pay it forward. Talking about her plans for the future, Clyn chooses to focus her attention on the past. I hope one day I can become someone's hero or make a positive impact like you did mine. With 2 kids of her own, Scales plans to start with them. Then, with her new career, she plans to become an even bigger hero. Colvin's heroics showed her there was a light in the dark. Now she sees it's her job to pay it forward and show a new generation of lost souls that there is hope. The story of Sergeant Jeff Colvin and Clyn Scales is one of sadness turned into happiness. It stands as proof that there's good in the world and there are people committed to being good. This is important to remember, especially during tough times. After graduating from the police academy, as of June 2018, Clyn is officially a police officer. Can you guess who was in the audience cheering her on? Jeff Colvin and his wife, along with Jennifer Jones, all showed up to congratulate Clyn on her accomplishment.